think we can get started. Welcome. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar this afternoon. Thrilled to be joined by Rebecca Ryan. Rebecca is a noted top 50 professional futurist, economist, and best-selling author and entrepreneur. She's the founder of Next Generation Consulting, who helped ACCE with the new Horizon 2035 report. Looking a generation ahead, she outlined strategies in urban planning, economic development, and workforce development to ensure our communities are well equipped for the future trends and challenges. With that, Rebecca, I'll hand it over to you.
Oh man, thank you, Will. It is wonderful to sort of not see everyone here, and I understand if you want to keep your video on mute. Who knows what you've got cooking over there? I do want to ask a couple questions just to get a sense of where you are. So, is anybody have others in the room with them? If you have others in the room with them, like Sarah, for example, maybe your toddler is in the room with you, or maybe you're with your staff, or maybe you're with members of your board. Would you just let me know? Because I'm kind of trying to get a sense of the lay of the land. Okay, there's a Doberman on site. I feel much more protected. Good dear. Okay, Rory, I just saw you're 11. Love it. Okay, so we've got dogs, pets. They are all welcome. They are all welcome. So a couple things about today. Number one, I have no slides, but that doesn't mean I don't have resources. So the best way to get the most out of our hour or so together here is to have another browser window open. So you've got your Zoom window open right now. That's how you're seeing and hearing me. Open a browser window or maybe two browser windows, because I'm going to be sending you to different links and showing you very specific things, because David and my team and ACCE and I have been working very hard to get you future ready. So with that, you got your browser windows open, you're buckled in, you're ready to roll. Let's do this thing. Okay, big picture. If I really zoom out and give you the big picture, the Horizon 2035 report are some of the what's. What should we be thinking about? What should we be focusing on? You know, what are the things that our staff, our leadership, our board needs to be thinking about to be future ready? We've got some techniques to share with you on this, but I'm going to toggle now to how. Because strategic foresight, or leading like a futurist, is not just what you focus on, although that gets the headlines, right? Like the top 10 trends for the next 10 years. We publish stuff like that all the time. It's like the what to be thinking about and planning for. But I'm going to take you to sort of the 200 level now, and I want to take you into how we think like futurists, how we lead like futurists. So we designed a tool to help you and your staff and board start to think like futurists. And there are a couple of other tools that are kind of always in our back pocket as we are trying to help people think and lead more like futurists. Now, one thing I want to say is I've got about 30 minutes of presentation. I'm going to take as many questions as I can get to, and all of you can see the questions. So Will and David Brown, I'm going to especially deputize you to keep an eye on any questions in the chat, because I'm sure they'll be sort of stacking up over time and as people say hi to each other, etc. So I'll talk for about 30 minutes. We'll do some Q&A, and then I'm going to close it up with some more resources. So here we go. If you have not already, here's the first resource for the day. You get bonus points. I just put it in the chat. You get bonus points if you've already downloaded it. And I am just fossilized enough that I like to also print it out. But the new Horizon 2035, report with the linchpin, timely, and timeless forces shaping our future. As I mentioned, this gives you a what. This gives you what. And just to kind of put this in perspective, the timeless influences are things that chambers are always going to have to be dealing with. Probably clear back 400 years ago, chambers were doing this, and maybe 400 years into the future, chambers will be doing this. But the timely and the linchpin issues are the ones that your board, your leaders, are going to be grappling with, trying to make sense of. So to help you get the most of that, we designed a discussion guide to kind of get you started. So I just put it in the chat. It's a PDF, and this is the only time I'm going to break my silence and share my screen, because I really do not appreciate when people take over my screen. I can't imagine you like it either. But this is the little discussion guide that we've put together for you. So Horizon 2035 says what to focus on? This is a way into having a discussion with your leadership, with your board about how to think about it. And this is a game that we as futurists use frequently because when people are facing the future, they don't know where to start thinking. So between Horizon 2035 and this discussion guide, this is a little framework to help you think about the future. So all the instructions are in here about how to host, how to set up the discussion. The bottom of page 2, if you've got this open in your own Acrobat reader or in your own preview, you can see that there's a 4 square involved here because we're going to invite you and your leaders or your staff to be thinking and sorting these influences for your chamber. No two chambers are alike. And there might be some things that you have on lock. And there might be other things that you're like, whoa, 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 I haven't even ever heard of this, influence. Am I really ready? So on page 2 is kind of how you get ready to host the conversation. On page 2, a very simple way for your staff, for your board to talk through each of these 11 influences on 2 criteria. So you see them numbered here. How certain are we that this influence or force is going to affect our chamber and our community? And if it's going to, highly influence, we're highly certain, or it's already happening, then you're going to put it, in that part of the XY diagram. If you're not certain at all, put it on the left. And then the second question, and it's important to do these in order, just a little pro tip, is to ask how much impact this issue is going to have on your chamber or on your community. Because if it's a low certainty, low impact, so just check this out again, if it ends up in the lower left, we're not certain it's going to happen and we don't think it would even have any impact, ignore it. But boy, that upper right-hand quadrant, high certainty, high impact, those are things you, your chamber, your community need to be paying attention to. So there's a third question here that's optional. And this is kind of going to take you to the next level if you have time to talk about it with your board, is to say, all right, among the high certainty, high impact forces or influences, how ready is our chamber, or how ready is our community? You don't have to do that level of questioning, but if your board is ready to have the conversation, if your leadership, if your team is ready to play a bigger role or be more proactive about the future, this is a really great question to ask. And then finally, we've got 4 debrief questions that we recommend. This comes out of 26 years of working with boards, working with leaders. But what did this discussion tell us? Were there any surprises or new insights? It's always good when your board can be surprised, like, wow, I did not realize we had a role to play with this. Do we need to be thinking about this a little bit differently? Or boy, how do I have to start showing up differently? Why does a discussion like this matter? And then the final thing is there anything in the very near term, in the next 3 months, in the next year, that we've got to start paying attention to as a chamber, because this stuff is literally on the horizon. So again, this PDF is designed to help you start a conversation with your board. So Horizon 2035 gives you the what, the forces and influences that we believe are going to reshape or shape your chambers and your communities in the next 10 years. This discussion guide is how to talk about some of these influences with your board. Okay, so if you've got questions about this, we tried to give you enough in here to host a good discussion without beating you over the brow with overly detailed questions. But if you have questions, please go ahead and throw them in the chat and we will get to them in just a moment. All right, now that was part 1. I've got 3 sections here. Here's part 2. Welcome to my home office. Let me just turn this a little bit, not that you can see, but I'm standing about equally between the wall on my right and the wall on my left. And if you think about this for yourself, right, you could think I'm standing in today, and this is a time scale. This is a time scale. So in my case, I'll do it. To your right is the past. To your left is the future. Am I doing this right? No, from your left is the past and to your right is the future. You get what I'm saying, right? So I'm going to do it my way. You do it your way. I think I have a mirroring issue on my Zoom. You're welcome. Okay, so you're standing in today. I'm looking to my past over this shoulder, and I'm looking to my future over this shoulder. As most chambers do their planning, not all, but most, which direction do they look first? Many chambers look first to the past to do their planning. So they ask questions like, what are our big industry clusters? How can we just nail those a little better, faster, cheaper? Or what are we doing with events? How can we increase our, sponsorship or increase the number of people coming to our events a little better, faster, cheaper, right? Most organizations, it's not just chambers, most organizations look first to their greatest hits. But let's put this together physically. If I'm planning for the future, but I choose to look to the past, I am literally walking into the future while staring backwards. And this is my little dog just came in. So just to put this in perspective, right? How do futurists plan and think? They don't do it based on what's behind them. Their approach, their lookout is towards what's coming. So Horizon 2035 has already given you a leg up on these 11 forces and influences that are likely to shape your communities, but there's more beyond that. There's more beyond that. So I'm going to share with you 2 different techniques for you, your team, your board to use as you think about the future. The first one is scenario planning. And I'm bringing this up today. I normally wouldn't bring this up in like an intro class or like a how to think like a futurist, except that the markets right now have got some uncertainty in them. There's some froth. There are a lot of things that haven't been quite nailed down. We don't know where all the chips are going to fall. And in times of uncertainty, it is very common for people to seize up. They don't want to do anything. We're starting to see this among our clients. We're starting to see this among chambers, among local governments, that it's like, okay, don't make any sudden moves because we're not really sure how things are going to unfold. Totally understandable. But as a futurist, and frankly, like as an entrepreneur, when everyone is seized up, it's a really good time to be thinking about the future. Sort of like how Warren Buffett says, when the market goes down, buy, right? So as other people are seizing up, how can we as chambers and catalytic leaders be thinking more strategically about the future? So I brought along for you today 2 resources about scenario planning. Now, one of them is if you like to read, and one of them is if you like to watch. So for now, I'm just going to quickly show the reading portion here. So there are 6 steps to planning when you are in the midst of uncertainty. This can be used for anything. We used this intensely during the time of COVID, right? So step 1 is to figure out, okay, what do we know? What do we know for sure about what is happening and what is likely to happen? You get that the way we do it is on flip charts. Okay, we know this. Then we say, okay, what don't we know? Because it's important to also track those unknowns. And then you keep updating the known and unknowns as we go. A real world example of this is one of our clients, one of your peers, has got one of the CHIPS grants, and they have put a ton of development money and site preparation money into this already. And they're like, oh my gosh, is this going to happen or is this not going to happen? So this is a technique that they are using to figure out how they're going to move forward with some of these sort of shovel-ready plans that shovels are already ready. Shovels have already been being used. So step 2 is what don't we know? Step 3 is to just keep track of these lists, because if big things change, you've got to adjust your plans. But here's step 4, and this is the money step. Start with the challenging future. So this is an opportunity for you to think through, if things went the wrong way at the wrong time, where are we going to be in, and you decide if it's 3 years time, 5 years time, 2 years time, whatever it is. And you always start with the challenging future first. And this is 26 years of experience here. You start with the challenging future first, because for all of the Eeyores, sort of the glass half empty folks on your board and on your staff, if you do not start with the challenging future, they cannot get to the visionary future. They have to get, like, all the worries have to be dumped out onto the table. Then they can move to the next future. So start at the bottom and work to the top. So first, just brainstorm. All right, what could this challenging future really look like? And it's okay to get dark in this, because you need to do that. You need to be ready for anything during times of uncertainty. Then you go to the expectable future, right? And you brainstorm that together. All right, well, what is most likely to happen based on what we know? What's most likely to happen based on what we know? Then you do a visionary future and you say, if the right things happen in the right way at the right time with the right people, what could success look like there? And frankly, after you just simply go through these 3 brainstorms, a lot of people are resting more easily. They can start to see, like, okay, maybe I don't have to catastrophize if I'm a normal worrier. I can see that there are other futures possible. But I will also say, for some of those leaders who have been saying to us, don't worry, everything's going to be fine, they don't always come off as credible. They come off as just glass half full, or maybe sort of ignoring some of the other signals. So when you do a range of plausible futures, like futurists do, it kind of gives a way in for everybody to imagine multiple futures. And then step 5, this is pretty simple, is to say, if we think we're in the challenging zone now, or the expectable zone, or maybe you're in the visionary zone, are there some things we could do to just improve our zone, to just bump our zone a little bit further north? And generally, a list of 3 to 5 things that people recognize and that are doable are enough to sort of get and keep some momentum towards the future. So step 6 there is extra credit. These are for the overachievers, the ones who always sat in the front of every classroom. But you can also identify some tripwires, because if the future truly is uncertain, what could happen is you take a step forward, but then you get some bad news and you've got to reevaluate. So just to be able to say, listen, if we get the letter that this funding has been cut, or if we lose one of our all-stars, or what the things are for your organization, if our long-serving chamber, chair finally retires, like she or he has been threatening to do for years, then what? If you have your tripwires kind of plotted out, then you're a little more ready for the future. So those are the 6 steps of how to plan amidst uncertainty. Again, please add any questions that you have to the chat, and we will get to you. Okay, so far we've talked about the Horizon 2035 discussion guide, how you can lead your board or your staff through a meaningful conversation that's not just opinions, but a really meaningful conversation that'll be helpful for your chamber to figure out the role it can play moving forward. And we've talked about how you do scenario planning in anxious times. The third technique I want to share with you today is something called signals and sense making. Signals and sense making. And let me just back up and share what a signal is. So I think the best way to understand signals and sense making is this, is to say, so I have a dog. Some of you, there's a Doberman at home. There are other dogs at home with you today. We walk our dogs, right? And when we're walking our dogs, if we're wearing short sleeves, sometimes you get like a drop of water on you. And what's the first thing you do? I mean, the first thing I do is I get a little bigger and I look up. and I'm trying to see like bird, cloud, like what was that? What was that? I'm trying to make sense of a signal. The signal is a little drop of water, and I immediately look up and I broaden my own physical radar to pick up if there are more signals, if there are more raindrops. And the best way to really understand the difference or what a signal is to say this. I'll say it twice. A signal is to a trend what a raindrop is to a rainstorm. Again, a signal is to a trend what a raindrop is to a rainstorm. Okay. So this is for those of you who really fancy yourselves as futurists, who really see yourselves as visionary. If this is something that kind of comes naturally to you, signals is sort of that next level of this. And here's how it looks in practice. So I'll tell you how we do it at my shop. So I'm a professional futurist. I'm an economist. Once a week on a Wednesday afternoon, I gather a bunch of other nerds who care about the future of cities, and we all bring one or two signals of the future. Things we've maybe seen in the local newspaper, something that's happened to us, like a conversation we've recently had that just makes our ears kind of perk up and our head cocked to the side like a dog hearing a harmonica for the first time. So signals of the future are things that look odd or strange. They're not part of a rainstorm. They're not part of a trend. They're things that make you wonder, what is this? This doesn't fit. I'll give you an example. Last night was my signals meeting. And by the way, if you would like to stop in at my signals meeting, put your email in the chat and I'll send you the invitation. You're always open to eavesdrop. It's every Wednesday, 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Central. We're very friendly. You do not have to come with a signal. You can simply watch and participate. But last night, at Signals last night, we have a person in our group who is from Canada. And one of the signals that she brought, she lives in the province of Quebec, she brought a signal that said 50% of Quebecois who were planning to go to the US for spring break have canceled their plans to go to the US. So this, US-Canada situation that's emerging this week. And I thought, well, that's an interesting signal. So we penciled that out. And for the next bit, that's going to be $3 billion in economic impact to the United States, right? So that becomes a signal. Like, 50% of Quebecois are changing their travel plans. What could be some of the longer term impact of this if the signal holds? So when we're bringing a signal, we're not trying to be right about the future. We're not trying to make a projection about the future. All we're doing is what I do when I notice there may be some rain coming out of the sky, is we notice it and we're looking to see if there are other signals on the horizon that might connect. So how can you do this? Well, one thing is to just eavesdrop on my signals group, if you would like. We're all nerds committed to the future of cities, so we're bringing those kinds of signals. The other thing that you can do is you can introduce signals and sense making in your board meetings, in your team meetings. Most of our clients end up using signals and sense making as an ongoing part of like the highest levels of discussion. So let me drop a couple more links, one more link into the chat. This is a signals and sense making sort of a play-by-play, a toolkit. And it's exactly the process that we use with our signalers and sense makers. So literally round one, everybody shares a signal, you can pass. So imagine doing this at a staff meeting, or imagine doing this at a board meeting, right? Has anybody picked up on some signals that we think is going to impact the future of our local economy? What are those, right? We do it confidentially, Chatham House rules, anything that's said here stays here. And then after anybody who has a signal has shared it, then we go back around and say, let's make some sense of this. Is anybody else noticing something similar? And again, the point is not to predict the future. The point instead is to be ready in like a future ready posture. so that by the time a signal becomes a trend, you can say, we've already talked about that. We had actually, we've been tracking some of these things over time. So signals and sense making. Now, quick review, right? We've got the discussion guide for Horizon 2035. We've got the scenario planning for anxious times. How do you move forward when everybody's a little stressed out or unsure? There's a little uncertainty in the market. And the third thing is around signals and sense making. So 3 tools, 3 techniques. And I want to make sure that I think you guys probably know, but we send out a signal of the week every Monday, most Mondays. Sometimes we miss. And if you're not already getting the signal of the week, but you'd like to, please sign up. It's very short email. It has like a number or a word, a short description, and a link to more. So if you would like some help just with your own signal tracking, we're happy to share that with you. We love sharing it with you, and we love to hear your signals as well. Oh, thanks, Denise. That's so nice of you to say. Appreciate that. Okay, so let me stop there with those 3 techniques so far. A discussion around Horizon 2035, how to do scenario planning during anxious times. I know I jammed a lot in there. And then 3, balloons for everybody. No, 3, signals and sense making. So what are the questions that have maybe been peeling in? Will or David, or do people want to take themselves off mute and ask? I'm open to that too.
Well, Juan, could you throw the signals and sense making resource into the chat? I
Yep.
don't think that one made it in there.
I think you're right. I may have privately sent that just to one person. So here it is, the very bottom of the chat, signals and sense making explained. But honestly, the best way to understand it is to just come and join our little band of weirdos and join the fun. Okay, Corey's asking, did I miss the toolkit? You, Corey, did not miss the toolkit. I'm gonna put it right. If you're thinking about the same toolkit I'm thinking of, this is the one that ACCE has published on their website at the bottom of the Horizon 2035 page. My team has put this toolkit together. It's great for understanding what do we mean when we talk about strategic foresight? How can I, as a leader, lead with more foresight? What are some of the techniques that I can use with my team to start to build this muscle up? Because again, if you don't want to do a plan based on yesterday, and you want to do a plan based on tomorrow, you have to have some of these capabilities. Okay. Denise's question is, we know we're behind if we're not talking about AI with our members. Where should we start? So, hoi, hoi, hoi. Man, I want to open this up to you too, but what I'll share with you, Denise, is my experience. So my experience is that chambers and even larger, like statewide economic development organizations, are starting to pull people together to do AI roadmaps for certain sectors of the economy. So that's one way you could do this, is to say, hey, let's pull a whole bunch or let's open the invitation, right? So everybody in entertainment in Nashville, if you're interested in like the future of AI, let's get together and let's roadmap it out. I think the truth is still AI is largely misunderstood, like what it is, what it can do, what some of the time frames are. And so just even like a really simple level set would be helpful. Another thing you could do is host somebody who knows AI and knows it, broadly for businesses generally. The things that we personally are working on is all of our automated processes. How do we create agents? You hear about agentic AI. How can we create AI agents who can make those things easier for us, right? So that's one thing that we are. I think that's kind of on the edge of some of the applications. So we're trying to use some of those edge cases. Will, I wonder from your perspective or Sherry Ann's perspective, what is the approach that ACCE has seen or would recommend when people are starting from zero? around AI?
I think,
Oh,
and I'll paste a blog post in the chat as well. So we put up a quick e-course that we put together for chambers to dive a little bit deeper into how their organizations can use it. But we think that with a couple quick guidelines in place to empower your teams to start to explore, that's really where we've seen most chambers where they've landed so far. And the blog post I'm going to put in the chat includes some examples of how chambers have used it. Now, I think helping your members navigate the landscape is very much like you mentioned, Rebecca. It's going to depend on the industry. It's going to depend on the expertise within your region. But putting some simple policies in place and letting your team explore with some guidelines is how most chambers have approached AI so far.
good deal. I'm looking for additional questions in the chat, and I don't see a whole bunch at this point, but I do appreciate there's another resource. I'm sure, Denise, you saw it in there too, of something that Diane is doing in Aiken. All right, Corey's got an amazing speaker on AI. Oh, Angie, that's an interesting use case of using AI to capture that institutional intelligence and knowledge from older generations. Super cool. Good deal. All right, I'm going to wait for just a couple of more minutes. I know I threw a lot at you today. What I'll do while I'm waiting for any additional questions to come in is this. So the ACCE Horizon Discussion Guide that I'll re-add to the chat right now. This is for any chamber. I think any chamber at any level that wants its board and staff to be ready for what's coming. This Horizon 2035 is such a gift to the profession in terms of thinking how to manage some of the current and impending changes. Awesome. And AI has generated a summary of Horizon 2035, which you too can get on YouTube. Thanks, Will. So I would say that resource is for anybody. The resources on scenario planning, I'll add these to the chat now. These would be for, I think, two kinds of folks. This would be for chambers who are like, we're not sure if we should move forward with any planning because there is so much uncertainty. That's one great use of scenarios. The second great use for scenarios is when something has fundamentally changed in your community. So years ago, for example, I had a client who had a case in front of the Supreme Court that was going to determine whether their organization was going to continue or not continue. It doesn't get any bigger or more existential than that. So they did the scenario process because they knew they had to be ready for a terrible outcome and a really great outcome. And their question was, what can we do to be prepared for either? And believe it or not, even when they were facing termination, there were things that they could do to be ready for that outcome. So if you are facing a huge disruption in, your plans for the future, et cetera, those are some of the scenario planning is such a powerful tool to help you not feel stuck. David, was that a question to me or was that a question
Yeah,
to
Rebecca, Alan Gumble asked that question about in your
Oh.
experience of using scenario planning, do you recommend building narratives to help people understand the future that may not have participated in the full discussion?
Yeah, thank you, David. And thank you, Alan, for the question. Absolutely. When we design scenarios, they tend to work better. And we've got several people in the call today who can attest to this, that when you get a story of the future or a story about a kid who's going to grow up in your community and what their experience is going to be, it's a completely different conversation than just like bullet points on a list. So we are storytelling animals. The more we can use stories to talk about the future, the better. But man, if you're in a pinch and you have 2 hours in a boardroom in an afternoon, just go through that 6-step guide, or 5 steps if you don't want to do the bonus stuff. Just go through that 5-step guide. That can be enough to get you there. And Alan, you're doing kind of 300 level foresight to turn it into a narrative. Okay, so scenario planning is a, do you recommend having a facilitator to lead the discussion? I mean, the answer is yes, but there are some people on your staff who probably are very good facilitators. Like, I don't think you always have to hire it out. The facilitator's job, right, is to keep the conversation going in a productive way. So they're the guardrails on the time. They're the guardrails so that we don't drift into the weeds when we're trying to stay big picture, or get too big picture when we need to get tactical. So yes, I think it's best if somebody facilitates the discussion who's not also trying to be a participant in the discussion. And for scenario planning, that's definitely the case. Good question. Good question.
Rebecca, David Ferris asked, how do you navigate gaps in the team that resist the idea of future-oriented leadership?
Okay, David. Who was asked the question, David?
David Ferris.
Oh, that 2 Davids, double Davids for me today. I'm loving it. All right, David Ferris. I'm putting my arm around you right now. And if you are in a situation where people don't care about the future, you might not be the right fit for that organization. And I will tell you, there are many, many, many places who are working hard to grow into their potential and who are interested in having these conversations about the future. Now, that said, that's the Rebecca, your older sister, putting her arm around your shoulder version of the talk. That being said, I have found that the quickest way to get people who seem curmudgeonly or they don't care or why talk about the future, the best way to get them interested in the future is to ask, do we think your community is going to be a place that your kids and grandkids are going to want to move to? Those heartstrings matter a lot. The Italians have that phrase that when a child is born, so is a grandmother. And that stuff has helped, in my 26 years, has helped some of the most curmudgeonly people have a different orientation. So if you frame it of like, okay, maybe don't frame it as futures. Say, how do we create a place that our grandkids are going to love to call home, are going to want to come back to? That can be a way in. Okay, David, sorry. Whomever that question was from, that was the answer for them. Are there any other questions, DB, that you're seeing in the chat?
I am not.
All right. Okay, so let me wrap this up for you. Or poor Christina, who's just entering. Let me wrap this up for you. ACCE has just concluded the Horizon 2035 process, and we've got the report now with the 10 things to think about, the 11 things to think about for the future. But if that's all that you do, you could do more. You could do more. And we know that none of you have probably taken futurist classes. None of you. We all have to take history classes. That's kind of crazy, isn't it? We all take history classes, but we're all going to live in the future. We're all trying to make decisions that are going to benefit the future. So ACCE and is your partner in this. David and I are your partner in this, because the next step is how to build a set of techniques, a way of thinking that can help your organization move towards and even embrace what's coming, not just continue to rinse, repeat your past or prior plans. Just to put this in perspective, on average, companies exist for 40 years. The companies that exist for much longer than 40 years are usually spirit companies, because drinking is timeless, right? But most companies last for 40 years. So I don't know how old your chamber is. It might be older than 40 years. It might be at the 40-year mark. It might be younger than that. But what I know for sure is that your successor will not have the same chamber that you have, because of the natural business cycle, because of the natural rise and fall of organizations. So each of us today is here because our parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, our predecessors made some moves. did some things that put us in these seats today. And the stewardship of chamber leadership is about how do we act today in ways that are going to make this community an even better place to live and work for future generations. So it's a big task, but I believe, I've been doing this for 26, going to be 27 years real soon. Chambers are some of the best equipped. Business is highly trusted, as you know. You can be honest brokers in communities. You can get people to the table who haven't been to the table before. So this is our moment. This is our moment as chamber executives and leaders to provide that catalytic leadership that our communities are aching for, are just aching for. So David and I are here to help you any step of the way. We'll see you at ACCE in Philly in this summer, and hopefully we'll be bringing more resources to you to help you think and lead like futurists. Will Burns, back to you.
Thanks, Rebecca. Appreciate your time this afternoon. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. For anyone who needs that discussion guide, it's been added to the Horizon homepage. Visit acce.org/horizon. Appreciate your time. Let us know how ACCE can help. Feel free to email anyone on the team with any questions you have. Appreciate it. Thanks, Rebecca.
Thanks, Will. Thanks, David. Take care, everybody. Good to see you.